All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 2011 meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, would you please announce our agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and good morning, Commissioners. Today's agenda includes 3 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking seeking comment on the impact of the Local Community Radio Act on the future licensing of low-power FM and FM translator stations. Second, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking designed to empower consumers to prevent and detect unauthorized telephone bill charges by improving the disclosure of third-party charges on telephone bills. For your third and final item today, you will consider a report and order enabling a more effective emergency response system by ensuring that 911 call centers continue to receive precise wireless E911 location information, and a second further notice of proposed rulemaking and a notice of proposed rulemaking seeking to improve E911 location accuracy and reliability for existing and new voice communications technologies, including voice over internet protocol. This is your agenda for today. The first item will be presented by the Media Bureau. William Lake, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Mr. Lake, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We put before you today a notice that will benefit consumers by making it possible for us to license new low-power community FM radio stations and FM translator stations. The notice of proposed rulemaking proposes a creative means of processing thousands of FM translator applications that have been pending since a 2003 auction, and a plan for moving rapidly to license new low-power FM stations. The proposal will enable the prompt licensing of many additional FM translator stations in smaller markets and rural communities, preserve opportunities for low-power FM stations in our cities and larger markets, and, consistent with a recent congressional mandate, ensure the development of a more robust local community radio service. Also included in the notice are recommendations to strengthen local radio on the AM band by broadening the ability of AM stations to use FM translators. Joining me at the table are Peter Doyle, Tom Hutton, Jim Bradshaw, and Kelly Donahue of the Bureau's Audio Division. Kelly will present the item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. In this third further notice, we consider how the recently enacted Local Community Radio Act, or LCRA, will impact future LPFM and translator station licensing. Translator and LPFM advocates for years have been competing for the same limited spectrum. In 2005, the Commission froze processing the remaining 6,500 translator applications from Auction 83 to consider their impact on the LPFM service. The LCRA requires the FCC to balance the competing demands of LPFM and translator applicants when making licensing decisions. Section 5 of the Act requires the Commission to ensure that licenses are available for both LPFM and translator stations, that licensing decisions are based on community needs, and that translator and LPFM stations remain equal in status. Today's notice tentatively finds that a previously adopted cap on translator applications is inconsistent with the LCRA's directives. It considers 3 alternate processing policies and tentatively concludes that a market-specific processing policy would most faithfully implement Section 5's directives. Specifically, the NPRM sets forth proposed LPFM channel floors for the top 150 markets and proposes to dismiss all translator applications in markets where the number of available LPFM channels is below the channel floor. We tentatively find that this market-specific approach would benefit both the LPFM and translator services. For translators, it would allow us to process more translator applications than under the 10 application cap approach, and would permit the immediate licensing of FM translators in rural areas. For LPFMs, it would preserve opportunities in urban areas where available spectrum is most scarce. The notice also considers whether the Commission should take additional steps to prevent the trafficking of translator construction permits. Applicant filing behavior in the last translator window was, without a doubt, skewed. A small handful of filers submitted 1/2 of the 13,000 plus applications filed. The Commission previously noted its concern about the conduct of several of these very large filers, who appear to have acquired hundreds of translator applications for the sole purpose of selling them, which promotes neither diversity nor localism. The notice asks whether additional measures should be taken to protect against abuses in the translator licensing process. Finally, the notice seeks comment on expanding opportunities for AM stations to use FM translators in their operations. We recently revised our rules to allow certain FM translators to rebroadcast the signal of a local AM station. This has proven to be a very successful deregulatory measure. Approximately 500 AM stations now use FM translators, providing greater coverage of local events, especially at night when many AM stations have to reduce their power or shut down operations altogether on their primary transmitters. In light of this success, we seek comment on whether to allow translators from the Auction 83 pool to also rebroadcast AM stations at night. We believe that resolving this issue before we resume processing the pending translator applications will align FM translator licensing outcomes more closely with demand and will further the LCRA's mandate to make licensing decisions based on community needs. The Media Bureau recommends adoption of this third further notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, we will move to comments from the bench. Commissioner Copps.
Thank you. Low power to the people. That's been the dream of a lot of us for a long, long time. And today that dream moves a step closer to reality. A year ago, the chances of this happening looked pretty bleak. But thanks to the incredible efforts of Representatives Mike Doyle and Lee Terry and Senators Maria Cantwell and John McCain, who've been working on this for a long, long time, and the committee leadership of the House and the Senate and many others, Congress and the President signed into law the Local Community Radio Act. And behind all of their effort was the great and even heroic work of Prometheus and the Future of Music Coalition and many other public interest groups whose inspiration and energy overcame a lot of obstacles along the way. Theirs was a lesson in what vision and perseverance can achieve. Thanks to the Local Community Radio Act, more than 160 million people unserved and underserved by local low-power FM radio will be able to reap its benefits. Truly local broadcasting operated by truly diverse station owners. Now the duty falls on us to ensure this wonderful new opportunity for People's Radio on the People's airwaves. Digressing but a few seconds, I think the Third Circuit Court's decision last week on media ownership rules underscored that it is not only everyday citizens and public interest advocates who expect real diversity in their media outlets. The statute and the courts expect it too. Its decision addressed head-on the limited attention and lackluster action previous FCCs demonstrated in confronting the dearth of minority-owned and female-owned broadcast stations in this country. In this day of so much media consolidation, of mind-numbing program homogenization and dumbing us down news, new voices are critically important if we are really serious about sustaining America's civic dialogue and its citizen engagement. Consider the stats. Between 1996 and 2007, the number of commercial radio station owners in our country declined by almost 40%. And the largest two commercial companies in our markets currently have, on average, 74% of the total radio advertising revenue. So much for localism, diversity, and competition. Quite a few full-power broadcasters have struggled to resist this trend. But it's tougher every day for them to sustain their values in markets, media markets and financial markets, where the bottom line so often trumps the common good. Something more is needed, and a significant part of that something else could just be low-power FM radio. I am pleased the item before us handles the implementation of the Local Community Radio Act in a measured and generally balanced manner. It gives long-delayed life to low power while recognizing the importance of translators. Translators serve an important function in reaching underserved communities and in providing greater reach to valuable programming. I think we would all agree on that. Currently, in the top 50 markets, there are 607 licensed FM translators fulfilling this function. In those same markets, there are just 86 licensed low-power FMs. I believe, and this item proposes, that the time is now to add more independent low-power voices to the airwaves. And LPFM should not be relegated to low-density markets where radio spectrum is in lower demand. They should serve their listeners wherever we can find room. The opportunity we have before us now for new stations to reach deep into their diverse communities of service with targeted news, information, music, and other cultural offerings is precious, and we ought to seize the day. I am supportive of the market-by-market approach put forward in the further notice. This approach is crafted on the proposition that low power should be available in every possible market, specifically including spectrum-limited markets, while permitting translator applicants to pursue more licenses once low-power FM has a shot at gaining a toehold. There is nothing in today's action that precludes translator applicants from pursuing licenses in the future, even in those markets where pending applications may be dismissed. Today's action simply clears the path forward to a new LPFM window, a window that may be the last substantive opportunity for LPFMs to obtain licenses ever. I would also note that the less stringent licensing standards applicable to translators will allow for pending applicants to have many licensing opportunities in the future. This tiered approach takes a realistic and I believe acceptable view of spectrum availability and community needs. While reaching the numerical channel floors proposed in this item may not be totally attainable in all major metropolitan areas, today's action is a crucial step toward creating at least some LPFM opportunities in large and diverse and spectrum-crowded communities. But make no mistake, a lot of hard work remains to be done to create a vibrant LPFM marketplace. There are a number of accompanying steps the Commission must take to breathe real life into low power. The most pressing is promptly to open a new LPFM window so potential licensees can get about the job of putting together plans and financing. And in this regard, I hope that when the auction window opens, we will have put in place by then some effective incentives so that women and minority-owned businesses can take shape in the low-power world. Additionally, the Commission will need to address the issues of second adjacent waivers and of permitting LPFM stations to use a more flexible contour-based approach for locating available channels. Put in a larger context, the benefits of low-power FMs, local coverage, viewpoint diversity, minority and female ownership, and strengthened civil engagement, are also the qualities we want to have across the entire broadcast landscape. We license the public airwaves in the public interest, and as the licensor of America's limited spectrum, the FCC must remain constantly vigilant to ensure that all broadcasters are serving the core public interest goals of localism, competition, and diversity. I want to thank the Chairman for bringing this item to us, and I hope we will continue to push full steam ahead with a fulsome record gathered by a wide diversity of stakeholders. Special thanks are due to Peter Doyle and Jim Bradshaw and others in the Media Bureau who have spent an inordinate amount of time poring over the data and identifying the best path forward. I also want to thank my media advisor, Josh Sinelli, for really wading into this issue and working for its enhancement every step of the way. Low-power radio is truly radio of the people, by the people, and for the people. And given the dedication of the grassroots effort for the last 10 years, I have, as the majority of my low-power friends have, the hula hoop to prove it. So I end where I began, low power to the people. Please note, however, that I remain an ardent enthusiast for full power to the people, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cobbs. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased to support today's third further notice of proposed rulemaking, in which we take the first step to implement the Local Community Radio Act of 2010. Congress has required us to ensure that both LPFM stations and FM translators have ample licensing opportunities. Reconciling the apparent tensions between LPFM and FM translator license applicants has not always been easy or handled with great alacrity. With this in mind, we undertake a review of our LPFM and FM translator licensing procedures and seek comment on processes to resolve FM translator applications that have been pending before the Commission since 2003. I'm delighted that we are reconsidering the policy of limiting each applicant to only 10 pending FM translator applications. I dissented against this cap in the third report and order in 2007, stating that it could increase the risk of harmful interference to services provided by FM translators in many unserved areas. With the benefit of experience and hindsight, we now tentatively conclude that this proposal was also unworkable in other respects. In advancing a replacement licensing methodology, we improve upon our previous 10 application restriction by seeking comment on a market-specific approach for processing the approximately 6,500 FM translator applications that remain pending. Likewise, I'm pleased that we seek comment on expanding the use of FM translators to rebroadcast AM station signals. As the notice recognizes, this expansion would allow AM licensees to better serve their communities by allowing stations to reach consumers at night. Ironically, often AM stations serve similar audiences as LPFM stations. I look forward to reviewing the record that develops in this proceeding and engaging with interested parties and my colleagues to implement Congress's directive. I thank the Chairman for his willingness to incorporate many edits, and the hardworking professionals of the Media Bureau, with a special note to the legendary audio division. We have to remember that once upon a time, that's all the FCC was. This is the nub of the FCC, right here, is the audio division, led by the equally legendary Peter Doyle and his team. So thank you for your thoughtful work on this matter, which has a very long and, shall we say, complicated history. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDowell. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. Usually when the FCC issues an order or notice, all we see is paper and more paper and more paper. Occasionally, we'll witness gradual changes to an industry or a business practice, but too often the impact isn't that obvious to the general public. But through our actions today, we inch closer to the moment when new and diverse voices will find their way to the ears of radio listeners yearning for local insights and fresh flavor that has been held at bay for far too long. The East Coast I-95 corridor is peppered with some of our nation's greatest and most ethnically diverse cities: Boston, New York, Baltimore, D.C. But if you turn on your radio as you drive through those areas, for the most part you'll hear standard big city news and programming. There's nothing wrong with that, I suppose, but there is so much more out there yearning to be heard, and this notice provides a means for that to happen. The advocates for low-power FM radio have come a long way, have fought many battles, and this notice of proposed rulemaking is the first step of their victory lap. Perhaps we'll see a station pop up that will cater to the proud residents of Anacostia, or maybe there'll be new voices on the air entertaining and informing workers in and around the vicinity of a large manufacturing plant. Already we see amazing rural stations run by farm workers, schools, and churches in rural Florida, Oregon, and the Carolinas, and we've heard of interest from Chicago public school systems, from workers in Baltimore, and from music groups in San Antonio, Texas. In New Orleans, local groups want to rebuild their city and connect with their neighbors, and in Miami, health educators in the Haitian community want another outlet to serve their city. This medium could provide the means for those goals to be realized. Some may ask if this notice is really so important, given the entertainment options and technology platforms we have today at our disposal. I say yes. The radio station that helped in my development and allowed for public engagement on the air in Charleston, South Carolina, is no longer on the air. The disappearance of smooth R&B sounds in Pittsburgh upset many listeners, including Congressman McDowell, who can't hear his favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire songs as he drives along the roadways. He is not happy, and as a fan of Earth, Wind, and Fire, I understand why. Radio is local. It's an important source of news, information, and entertainment in our communities, and its role and impact are partly the cause for why we're discussing this item today. The Local Community Radio Act of 2010, or LCRA, has sent a clear message that Congress wants more local radio, and we're excited and anxious to open the dial for new stations. In relaxing the station frequency spacing requirements, Congress has declared that more licenses should be made available for stations that serve the local needs of their community, and current statistics support this. Every week, radio reaches 93% of everyone in America over the age of 12. Further, the more than 200 million radio listeners spend on average 15 hours per week listening to the radio. In an era of media consolidation, too many local voices and musicians have gone silent in favor of national program and top 50 hits. Local afternoon drive shows that were broadcast from around the corner have been replaced with syndicated programming originating from other states. Moreover, about a third of the 13,000 commercial stations are owned by half a dozen corporations. Today, we start the countdown on the return of local voices to radio waves, as low-power radio stations will finally be given a space to broadcast in large urban markets. As a former publisher of a local newspaper, I can testify that a robust diversity of voices and attention to local community issues is a basis for a strong democracy. We plan on initiating the licensing of new stations as early as next summer, and while we would like to act as quickly as possible to get local voices on the air, we want to take the time to do it correctly. I want to encourage the radio community to stay vocal and submit comments on the best way to implement the directives of the LCRA and make sure low-power FM stations are given the best opportunity to get up and running. We won't address all of the issues on this first round, such as station frequency spacing waivers or the economic effect of LP-FM stations on the full power station market, but we will lay the foundation for a solid policy that meets the local needs of communities spread across the entire nation. The first issues we must face are the effectiveness of the previous policies implemented during the 2001 FM translator license registration window. We have approximately 65 applications pending, and we must establish efficient policies that address the translator applications while saving space for the licensing of new LP-FM stations. Going forward, we must strike a balance between the licensing of these two valuable services and ensure that the local communities are served. A wise man once said, "The translator and LP-FM communities will be forever locked in an embrace." Determining the criteria for this balance has never been an easy task, but we encourage the communications community to speak out and let us know what policies will best serve their needs. Based on a recent study by our Media Bureau, it appears that our previous processing policy that placed a 10 cap limit on applications will not be an effective means for saving space for future LP-FM stations. In 13 of the top 30 radio markets, if we were to process all of the pending transistor applications, we would effectively push any LP-FM radio station opportunities off the dial. The LCRA directives are clear that we can no longer exclude LP-FM from the limited spectrum, and we have some tough decisions upcoming on the best way to handle previous translator applications in relation to future LP-FM opportunities. I encourage the communications community to submit comments on current availability of spectrum for LP-FM opportunities and alternate policies that will ensure that future LP-FM station licenses will be available in spectrum congested markets. LP-FM stations serve a particularly important role in local media and democracy, and the FCC is interested in hearing local voices speak out on the options for an effective licensing strategy. We need to ensure that LP-FM stations have every opportunity to succeed. We are finally fine-tuning a spectrum availability market-based policy for balancing the demand for LP-FM licenses and translator licenses. We welcome the communications community to participate in this exercise to assure that the spectrum is properly divided in a manner that fosters a robust LP-FM service. In smaller markets, where there is ample spectrum available for LP-FM stations, we can proceed forward with translator licensing. But in larger markets, we have to make some difficult decisions on the disposition of pending translator licenses in order to assure space for a balanced LP-FM station market. With all this in mind, we must also deter the abusive acquisition of translator authorizations solely for the purpose of selling them. Companies that speculatively apply for licenses do not have the best interests of our communities in mind, and neighborhoods around the nation are hungry for voices on the air that reflect the diversity of America and address their local issues. The needs of our communities must be firmly in our focus as we work together to create a successful licensing system. The development of a robust LP-FM radio service is of critical importance in making sure that our media serves the needs of local communities. In order for broadcasters to best serve the public interest, we must preserve an avenue through which diverse voices can be heard. It can't be stressed enough that media plays a powerful role in the democratic process, as well as in shaping perceptions about who we are as individuals and as a nation. Low-power FM stations address the interests and concerns of specific groups, including neighborhoods, people of color, trade unions, and religious and linguistic communities. These locally owned broadcast outlets provide a forum for news and debate about important local issues, and they open the radio waves for coverage of high school football games, health alerts, school board meetings, local political candidate debates, and independent music. Through news and informational programming, these stations can help keep the focus on local law enforcement and emergency service issues. Despite what you may have heard, the Casey Anthony trial was not the only relevant court case in this nation. Our communities deserve better coverage of issues relevant to their neighborhoods. Local artists and people who reside in the community deserve a forum where they can be heard. I commend the 12-year journey of Prometheus Radio Project and the various organizers who worked tirelessly to get the LCRA passed. We will continue to develop the best policy to implement the LCRA, and I emphatically urge communities around the nation to pull together and start building strong applications for radio stations that broadcast what they want to hear. I wish to commend the legendary Peter Boyle and his team and the Media Bureau for this great first step in this long-awaited process. I look forward to the next iteration.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. I'm very pleased to be bringing this to a vote. I thank each of my colleagues for their work in developing the notice, and to the staff, Peter, in particular, thank you very much for your work on this. The action we're taking today breaks a long-standing logjam on spectrum, clearing the way for the development of robust local community radio service and processing thousands of pending FM translator applications. It's a win across the board. This is an initiative to promote spectrum efficiency. It will get spectrum being used more efficiently, particularly in larger congested markets, but also in rural markets where more service will be able to be provided on the spectrum dial. It will lead to more new entrants in the media space, to more independent voices, to more local programming, all important objectives of the FCC, ultimately providing enormous benefits to the public based on our nation's communications, particularly spectrum infrastructure. As you've heard from my colleagues, proponents of the LPFM and translator services have long vied for space on the crowded dial, and several months ago, Congress passed the Local Community Radio Act. I'd like to acknowledge the members of Congress who worked hard on this important legislation, including the legislation sponsors, Representatives Mike Doyle and Lee Terry, as well as Senators Cantwell and McCain. I was pleased that the Commission served as a resource to Congress during consideration of the law, and I'm very pleased today that we're taking important steps to implement the law. Today's further notice, as you've heard, builds on a detailed engineering analysis to craft a locally tailored, market-based proposal that will benefit both translator and LPFM service. It'll allow the licensing of many more translators than under the previous approach, while at the same time doing a better job of preserving and providing opportunities for LPFM in spectrum-limited markets. This is a terrific example of the FCC doing its job in managing spectrum wisely. Now, radio continues to be a very valuable service and part of our communications and media landscape. Indeed, notwithstanding the growth of the internet and other platforms, broadcast over-the-air radio listening has been increasing. It's actually an example of spectrum being used even more efficiently when it comes to radio. 93% of all Americans 12 and older tune into over-the-air broadcast radio every week. We recently released an information needs of communities report that stressed the importance of local voices and local news. That report noted that the LPFM service was created, the idea of it was to provide new voices on the airwaves, particularly for local groups, including schools, churches, other community-based organizations, to provide programming responsive to local community needs and interests. LPFM has done just that, a strong job reaching underserved communities such as non-English speakers, seniors, migrant workers in both urban and rural areas. Commissioner Clyburn, thank you. You had some terrific specific examples of that, examples of providing news and information on local issues and civic affairs, and also serving as emergency responders, rounding up our multi-platform efforts as a country to make sure that during emergencies, people wherever they are can receive alerts and information about what's going on. By expanding LPFM opportunities, we'll hear many more new entrants and independent programmers, as I said, all over the country, promoting both our democracy and our economy. I mentioned the ways in which this proposal advances our traditional goals of localism and diversity in this important medium, as well as providing new business and job creation opportunities. We're also proposing to immediately restart the licensing of FM translator stations in most smaller markets and rural areas to meet the needs of communities that have been waiting too long for translators. And I'm hopeful that we will move forward on opening an LPFM-only licensing window quickly, certainly in the coming year. We have our work cut out for us. This is important, and it's important that we're moving forward. And it's important that in the further notice, we're seeking to expand opportunities to use FM translators to rebroadcast AM stations. Our initial action last year, a deregulatory initiative which permitted cross-service rebroadcasts for the first time, has been a real success. In many cases, the added translator service has transformed marginal AM stations into competitive full-time media outlets that now provide expanded coverage of local news and events. Promoting these arrangements is consistent with our policy to make the most intensive and efficient use of spectrum resources, and again, to boost investment, to boost new business creation, to boost job creation, and also to support localism and diversity. So this is a win on many fronts. Again, thank you to my colleagues for all of your input. Thank you to all of you for working hard at this. Peter, thank you again. Cherise Smith in my office, I want to thank you very much. And let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So ordered. And the request for editorial privileges is granted. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, please announce our next item.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the second item on your agenda will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. It is entitled, Empowering Consumers to Prevent and Detect Billing for Unauthorized Charges, Consumer Information and Disclosure, and Truth in Billing Format.
Well, welcome all. Mr. Gurr, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Today's Notice of Proposed Rulemaking proposes the Commission's first set of rules focused entirely on cramming, the unlawful placement of unauthorized charges on a consumer's phone bill. Cramming is one of the largest categories of billing-related complaints that the Commission receives. Both the states and the Federal Trade Commission also see significant numbers of cramming complaints. And the complaints we see represent only a small part of the problem because crammers often hide their fraudulent charges in ways that make them hard to detect. We estimate that millions of American consumers are victims of cramming every year. Industry efforts to address cramming have not stopped it. The problem is not going away. This NPRM proposes rules that will empower consumers to detect and prevent cramming. Following up on the Commission's existing truth in billing efforts and our recent investigations of mystery fees, and drawing guidance from an ongoing congressional investigation, the proposed cramming rules will make fraudulent charges easier to find and harder to hide on lengthy phone bills. The proposed rules will also ensure that consumers know when they have options to prevent such charges in the future. We want to thank the Wireline Competition Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Enforcement Bureau, the Office of General Counsel, and the Office of Strategic Planning for their assistance and close collaboration on today's item. With me today at the table are Associate Bureau Chief Bill Friedman, John B. Adams, an attorney advisor in the Policy Division, and Kurt Schroeder and Nancy Stevenson, Deputy Chiefs of our Policy Division. I'd also like to thank Division Chief Colleen Heitkamp and Richard Smith and Rebecca Herschel in our Consumer Policy Division, as well as the CGB front office staff who worked on this NPRM. And now John Adams will present the item.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. The item before you today proposes rules to give consumers the tools they need to detect, to rectify, and to prevent cramming. Cramming is an illegal and often fraudulent activity. In cases of cramming, unauthorized charges may be placed on consumers' telephone bills, either by the telephone companies themselves or by third parties. These charges are generally for services that consumers have never ordered, they don't even know about, and they don't use. Today's NPRM proposes simple, targeted rules to help consumers deal with this problem. The proposed rules will be part of the Commission's Consumer Empowerment Agenda, which is focused on ensuring that consumers have the information they need to make smart decisions about telecommunication services in the marketplace. The record in this proceeding shows that cramming remains a significant problem for wireline consumers, as it has been for over a decade, and it is an emerging problem for wireless consumers. The record demonstrates that many consumers don't know that third-party charges can even be placed on their telephone bills, so they don't look for these charges. Most telephone companies, however, will allow consumers to block third-party charges, and usually with no additional fee. But our complaint data show that many consumers are unaware of the blocking options available to them until after they become a victim of cramming. Further, a Government Accountability Office report indicated that many consumers don't know how or where to file complaints regarding their telephone bills. The proposed rules are narrowly tailored to address each of these issues. They would require wireline telephone companies to do three things. First, we propose that wireline telephone companies must notify consumers at the point of sale, on each bill, and on their websites of any blocking services that they offer. Second, we propose that wireline telephone companies must place charges from all third parties in a separate section of the telephone bill that's separate and distinct from telephone company charges. The truth in billing rules already require that charges from different carriers be separated on the bill, such as local and long-distance charges from different companies. This proposed rule would apply the same requirements to charges from third-party vendors that are not common carriers, like the companies that put charges for diet plans or yoga lessons on a telephone bill. Third, we propose that telephone companies must notify consumers that complaints may be filed with the Commission and must provide the Commission's contact information for the submission of complaints. The proposed rule would require the FCC's contact information to be given clearly on phone bills and on the phone company's websites. This final requirement would also apply to wireless telephone companies as well as to wireline companies. The NPRM also seeks comment on several other possible requirements. These include several questions regarding whether wireline telephone companies should have additional obligations related to blocking third-party calls. Questions about whether they should be required to use a particular format or font or placement of certain charges on a bill to ensure that third-party charges are clearly and conspicuously disclosed, and whether wireline companies should be prohibited from including third-party charges on telephone bills altogether. The NPRM also seeks comment on whether wireline or wireless telephone companies should be required to provide contact information for third-party vendors on their phone bills and to verify the accuracy of this information. And also whether they should be required to screen third parties for prior legal violations before agreeing to place the third party's charges on their telephone bills. Finally, the NPRM seeks comment on whether the same rules that apply to wireline companies should also apply to wireless telephone companies and to providers of interconnected voice over internet protocol service. In proposing these rules, we believe that we have struck a balance that gives consumers empowering, actionable information without placing an undue burden on the industry. Nevertheless, the NPRM asks a number of questions about the potential costs to industry of implementing these rules, as well as the benefits to both consumers and the industry, and any strategies that would help maximize benefits and minimize costs. We believe that these proposals will empower consumers to better detect, rectify, and prevent cramming, and thereby reduce the unauthorized charges that often result in needless expenditures of time, effort, and money. We respectfully recommend adoption of the item and request editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Copps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always a good day at the Commission when our agenda includes a consumer-friendly item like today's notice of proposed rulemaking on cramming. It's a good meeting whenever we can breathe new life into our mandate as a consumer protection agency. This is a particularly timely item that brings the promise of much-needed relief for the thousands of consumers who complain to the FCC every year about unauthorized charges on their wire line and their wireless phone bills. As Mr. Adams noted, this is an emerging problem in the wireless world for consumers, and consumers there will be in need of solutions just as much as consumers in the wireline world. Because cramming can be difficult to identify and detect from a phone bill, a problem that this notice seeks to correct, The true number of Americans who fall victim to cramming is likely well above those who have complained directly to this commission. The MPRM identifies common sense solutions so that consumers will know what they are being billed for and how to take action against any fraudulent charges. An item like this would be welcomed at any time, but it is especially important in these difficult economic times when so many families are struggling to balance their household budgets. So I look forward to the record responses to our notice, to moving forward on this critical consumer issue as expeditiously as we can, and to working with the chairman and all my colleagues on our consumer empowerment agenda. Many thanks to everyone in the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau and all those other folks and other bureaus that Joel mentioned in his presentation, whose hard work brought us this good item today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief Gurin and Mr. Adams. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently about the necessity for John Adams Memorial here in the District of Columbia, so I imagine you're on board with that concept. Yes, yes, okay, just wanted to clear that up. Good. I do too. So, and I also vote to approve today's notice of proposed rulemaking designed to alert consumers to the practice of what has become known as cramming unauthorized charges on their telephone bills. As the record develops, I'll be interested in learning more about the scope of the practice of cramming and ways to empower consumers through potential amendments to the FCC's Truth in Billing rules. This NPRM explores whether these potential new requirements should be extended to both wireline and wireless carriers, and I look forward to learning more on this particular topic. I also appreciate that the NPRM seeks comment on the Commission's legal authority and asks whether the proposed rules would be compatible with the First Amendment. And I know, Mr. Adams, when you were there at the creation of the First Amendment, you'd probably agree with that as well. Finally, we must always remember that there are economic effects of new rules. As such, I will look for any innovative programs that may already exist in the marketplace that have the purpose of alerting consumers to cramming charges and notifying them of opportunities to request that charges be blocked from their carrier bills. If the record contains compelling evidence that marketplace solutions are not adequate, I will encourage my colleagues to craft potential rules in a manner that is narrowly targeted to our stated goals. I thank the chairman for his leadership and appreciate the hard work of everyone in CGB, and look forward to working with everyone on this item as the record develops. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. This notice proposes rules that will give consumers better tools to detect and prevent unauthorized charges or mystery fees which may appear on their telephone bills. Evidence to date indicates that this action is necessary because the Commission continues to receive between 2,000 and 3,000 complaints a year from consumers about unwanted and unrequested charges from their telephone companies. It is our responsibility at the FCC to protect telephone consumers when the marketplace is not functioning appropriately. Consumers should be informed of the choices they can make with respect to blocking third-party charges on their phone bills, and they need clear and conspicuous notice of third-party charges and where they can call to request further information about those charges. As such, I support our inquiry into the appropriate rule that will better inform and notify consumers, and I am particularly interested in whether these rules should apply across the board to both wireline and wireless companies. While the complaints about unauthorized charges on cell phone bills are not as prevalent as on wireline bills, I am interested in hearing about whether cell phone consumers should receive the same protections as wireline customers. In particular, do consumers expect that the Commission's rule will help inform and protect them no matter the technology they use to complete their calls? And does the evidence warrant the implementation of rules for wireless at this time? I look forward to hearing from consumers and the industry about these issues. I wish to thank the Consumer and Government Affairs Bureau along with the Enforcement Bureau for their work on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. Thank you to my colleagues and to the staff. Consumers don't often know what the word cramming means, but they know what it's like to get an unauthorized charge on their phone bill. Cramming is fraudulent and illegal, It happens when companies place a charge on a telephone bill for products that the consumer never requested. It could be from anything from long-distance service, horoscopes, diet plans, and it's unfortunately a serious and continuing problem for wireline telephone customers, and an emerging problem for wireless customers as well. The complaints that we receive here at the FCC and similar complaints to the Federal Trade Commission, to state authorities, and to carriers themselves all show that cramming is a widespread problem, especially for wireline service. And based on the staff's work, we believe that the complaints understate the extent of the problem. One expert survey found that only 5%, 1 in 20 of consumers who had received unauthorized charges from a crammer were even aware that the charges were on their bill. Now that more and more consumers use electronic billing and automatic payment, it's a serious and growing risk that unauthorized charges can go undetected for months or years, or sometimes never be detected at all. So that increases the incentives for crammers because they think they can get away with it. And it creates what, as I said, is a growing problem that requires sensible solutions. In all, we estimate that cramming may affect 15 to 20 million Americans a year. Anyone can be the victim of cramming. Couple of examples from our case files. One consumer complained to the North Carolina Attorney General's office about a company that claimed he had ordered that company's long-distance service over the internet. As he told the AG's office, that was impossible because he didn't own a computer. A consumer in Washington, D.C., victimized by cramming, was told by the cramming company that he had authorized the charge. When the consumer asked for proof, the company gave him an authorization that had someone else's name, a non-working email address, and a street address in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, that turned out to be the address of the Berkeley Springs Chamber of Commerce. Those are just a couple of the numerous cramming complaints that consumers have filed with us. The Commission has been aggressively pursuing reports of cramming and unauthorized fees, mystery fees. Several months ago, we approved a settlement with Verizon Wireless over unauthorized mystery fees charged to approximately 15 million customers. That involved a refund of about $53 million to customers and a $25 million voluntary payment to the U.S. Treasury. Just last month, also thanks to the hard work of our Enforcement Bureau, we issued 4 notices of apparent liability for forfeitures totaling $11.7 million against 4 carriers that appear to have engaged in widespread cramming. The FCC is turning up the heat on companies that rip off consumers with unauthorized fees. We're sending a clear message. If you charge consumers for something they didn't request, you'll be discovered and you'll be punished. The rules we propose today are common sense measures to empower consumers to identify fraudulent charges on their bill and take corrective action while minimizing the compliance burden on carriers. Keep in mind that carriers, the companies that consumers have the direct relationships with, are also sometimes the victim of cramming because they have to take the calls from consumers and often have to deal with unauthorized charges placed by third parties. I'm pleased that other parties are looking into this issue of cramming, including the Federal Trade Commission, the Senate Commerce Committee, and a number of states. In particular, I welcome Chairman Rockefeller's call for a hearing on this issue, which will take place tomorrow. I look forward to working with our partners in government and with all stakeholders to crack down on this illegal practice. I thank the Consumer Bureau, everyone sitting at this table for this hard work. As my colleagues have mentioned, this is another very good example of cross-agency efforts to tackle a real problem or sees a real opportunity. In this case, the Consumer Bureau, the Wireline and Wireless Bureaus, the Enforcement Bureau, all participated in crafting this proposal for common sense rules to empower and protect consumers. So with that, let us proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, so ordered. The request for editorial privileges is granted. And thank you. Madam Secretary, please announce our next item.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the final item on your agenda today will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. It is entitled Wireless E911 Location Accuracy Requirements, E911 Requirements for IP-Enabled Service Providers, and amending the definition of interconnected VoIP service in Section 9.3 of the Commission's rules.
Thank you very much. Admiral Barnett, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau is pleased to present to you today a third report and order, second further notice of proposed rulemaking and notice of proposed rulemaking, which strengthens and seeks to improve the Commission's enhanced 911 location accuracy rules that apply to wireless carriers and voice over Internet Protocol or VoIP service providers. Americans increasingly communicate using wireless mobile devices. In fact, 65% of 911 calls originate from these devices. Additionally, a growing number of consumers use VoIP services. It's critical that mobile wireless and VoIP service callers are able to utilize our nation's 911 system optimally. Providing reliable location accuracy is essential to ensuring that first responders reach these callers in time. The Commission's existing location accuracy rules have enabled us to make great progress in ensuring that PSAPs receive reliable location information when the public calls 911. With today's order and further notice, we lay out a path for further improvement of location accuracy for existing services and future development of location accuracy in next-generation services. The third report and order builds on the Commission's September 2010 location accuracy order and lays out a path for migration from today's rules, which apply different standards to network-based and handset-based accuracy methods, to eventual implementation of a unitary rule. The order also provides for testing by carriers for their location accuracy performance to ensure PSAPs receive accurate location information and directs the CSRIC to develop and recommend appropriate test procedures for the Commission's future consideration. The second further notice of proposed rulemaking focus on accuracy standards for interconnected VoIP services. It seeks comment on whether to modify the definition of interconnected VoIP for 911 purposes to cover outbound only interconnected VoIP service providers for 911 purposes, and seeks comment on the costs and the benefits of the proposed rule. It also seeks comment on whether we should adopt a set of general governing principles for the development of 911 location accuracy solutions for interconnected VoIP. Finally, the further notice explores the potential to develop emerging location accuracy solutions for next-generation voice services. Joining me here at the table are David Firth, Deputy Chief of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, David Seal and Patrick Donovan, both attorney advisors in the Bureau. I also want to acknowledge the team in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau that worked so diligently and long on this item, including Erica Olson, Tom Beers, Tim May, Aaron Garza, Henning Schulz-Rennie, John Healy, Jerome Stanshine, Stan Shiner, and Rizwan Chowdhury. In addition, I'd like to thank the Wireline Bureau, the Wireless Bureau, the Office of Engineering and Technology, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Maria Schwartz and Paul LaFontaine of the Chief Economist's Office, and the General Counsel's Office, Austin and his crew, for their tremendous effort and expert assistance. David Seal will now present the item on behalf of the Bureau.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The item before you today represents the Commission's next step in enhancing the public's ability to contact emergency services personnel during times of crisis and enable public safety personnel to obtain accurate information regarding the location of the caller. This item addresses these issues in three parts: a third report and order, a second further notice of proposed rulemaking, and a notice of proposed rulemaking. In the third report and order, we continue to strengthen our existing enhanced 911 E911 location accuracy regime for commercial mobile radio service, CMRS, providers by retaining the existing handset-based and network-based location accuracy standards and the 8-year implementation period established in our September 2010 E911 Location Accuracy Second Report and Order. Today's order provides that after the conclusion of the 8-year implementation period, the network-based standard will sunset, and all CMRS providers will be required to comply with a handset-based standard regardless of the location technology they use. The order provides for the Commission to determine the sunset date at a later time and to seek comment on such a date and the cost and benefits associated with it. The order also requires new CMRS networks to comply with the handset-based standard, regardless of what location technology they use. This requirement applies only to entirely new networks, not expansions or upgrades of existing networks. The order also requires wireless carriers to periodically test their outdoor E911 location accuracy results and to share the results with PSAPs, state 911 offices, and the Commission, subject to confidentiality safeguards. The order defers implementation of this requirement, however, pending development of recommended testing procedures by CSRIC. The order directs CSRIC to present its recommendations in 6 months, at which time they will be presented to the Commission for further notice and comment prior to implementing specific testing requirements and procedures. The second further notice of proposed rulemaking, or second FNPRM, seeks comment on several potential measures to improve 911 availability and location determination for users of interconnected voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP services. The further notice seeks comment on whether to extend the Commission's existing interconnected VoIP 911 requirements, first adopted in 2005, to outbound-only interconnected VoIP services, that is, services that support outbound calls to the public switch telephone network, but not inbound voice calling from the PSTN. These services allow consumers to place IP-based outbound calls to any telephone number and have grown increasingly popular in recent years. In light of the rapid expansion of these services, the further notice seeks comment on the potential public safety benefits of these providers supporting 911 calling and the potential public safety harm if they do not, and the potential cost to outbound-only VoIP providers of supporting 911 to the same extent that other interconnected VoIP providers do today. Additionally, the further notice seeks comment on developing a framework for ensuring that all covered VoIP service providers will eventually be able to provide automatic location information for VoIP 911 calls. Currently, interconnected VoIP customers must provide their location information manually by registering the physical location of their phones with their VoIP service providers. In light of the increasing popularity of VoIP calling, the enhanced mobility of VoIP devices, and evolving consumer expectations, the further notice seeks to develop a framework that will promote the development of automatic location solutions for VoIP calls to 911. While the further notice does not propose to adopt a specific automatic location accuracy standard or methodology for interconnected VoIP service at this time, it seeks comment on a set of general governing principles for the development of automatic location identification solutions to ensure that automatic location information can be generated and transmitted in the most technologically efficient and cost-effective manner. These potential solutions are likely to require participation by both over-the-top VoIP service providers that offer service directly to customers and broadband providers that provide underlying network connectivity for VoIP calls. Therefore, the potential governing principles might apply to both types of providers, but could also afford flexibility to develop alternative solutions appropriate to specific VoIP 911 scenarios. Further, The second FNPRM seeks comment on an array of issues associated with extending 911 calling and location accuracy requirements to broadband-based voice services other than interconnected and outbound-only interconnected VoIP services. The item requests comment on whether the Commission should seek to support 911 location determination through the leveraging of location technologies already being developed for commercial broadband applications, for example, in smartphones. In addition, the further notice seeks comment on technological approaches to improve location accuracy for 911 communications originating from indoor environments. Lastly, the item includes a separate notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks comment on whether amending the definition of interconnected VoIP service for 911 purposes would have any impact on the Commission's interpretation of certain statutes, such as the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act and the Truth in Caller ID Act that reference the Commission's existing definition of interconnected VoIP service. The Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Cops.
Well, thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. I was very pleased to receive this item. E911 has been a matter of ongoing and high priority for this commission for many, many years now, and today's proceeding is clearly a step in the right direction. I don't need to dwell on the importance of E911, saving lives, protecting property, and preventing and discouraging crime. Location accuracy has gotten measurably better, and certainly we have seen enhancements in both GPS-capable handsets and in network upgrades. That's good news for citizens, but even as we applaud that, we know that our job is far from being done, and we continue to be pushed hard by our public interest, public safety obligation to move things along with urgency and all deliberate speed. In light of the dynamic changes in technology, I continue to support maintaining separate standards for both network and handset-based location systems. I'm particularly pleased that we're now requiring carriers to test and report to us, as well as to state 911 centers and PSAPs, whether or not they are hitting the mark for outdoor calls. This kind of real-world data can only make our diagnosis and our decisions better, and it will provide our Communications Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council, CSRIC, important information that it needs as it considers its next steps and recommendations, and I'm hopeful CSRIC will provide the guidance we need toward the development of effective standards as a top priority. I was particularly pleased to hear you say that there's kind of a 6-month deadline on that, and I look forward to receiving those recommendations and a very quick action by the Commission after that. As I've stated many times before, vitally necessary E911 infrastructure will best be built by the private sector and the public sector discussing together and planning together and working together and pulling together to come up with solutions together. It's not something that either sector can accomplish all by itself. I also want to reemphasize the priority of keeping clear focus on the matter of indoor testing. As more consumers cut the cord, their cell phones become the one and often only 911 capable device in the house. And today we ask some of the right questions about indoor testing, and I welcome that, because it is just absolutely critical that we get this right. The record clearly shows that my requests for reports and studies on in-building coverage go back many years in the E911 location accuracy docket. I'm also encouraged that we propose to expand E911 requirements to a greater set of VoIP issues. It makes complete sense to me that VoIP users who can make calls to anyone would expect to be able to reach 911 in an emergency. I look forward to what I hope is a thorough record that tells us what consumers of this and other one-way services expect, so I appreciate the notice's questions about our authority to extend E911 requirements to VoIP services for which callers can only call out. But it should not stop there. To me, public safety communication means two-way communications. Two-way communications become really important if an emergency call gets disconnected or goes dead for any reason, or if other emergency responders need to contact the caller. So I'm pleased that we will inform ourselves about what consumers need in the way of receiving calls back from emergency call centers. I understand that the Net 911 Improvement Act bolsters our legal authority in this area. Nevertheless, as I have said before, I believe the Commission should look comprehensively at the proper classification of VoIP. This matter only underlines the urgency one more time. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, our charge to protect the safety of the American people is clear and should never have to hinge on semantics or distinctions without a real difference. We just seem to keep bumping into this problem month after month at meetings, and I am for clearing the roadway as soon as we can. The item also moves the bill forward for VoIP users by asking how we can ensure that location information is automatically updated. Today, that updating is a manual process. The issues are, I know, technically challenging. I understand that, but we live in a digital world, and we here at the Commission must demand digital solutions to these critical problems. So here, too, I look forward to reviewing the record and to taking appropriate steps to move this issue expeditiously forward. I want to thank the Public Safety Bureau for bringing us this important item and helping us work through its many technical aspects. I commend the chairman for his leadership in making these issues a priority, and I thank him and my colleagues for all working together to enhance the item, and it's made its way across the 8th floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm voting to approve today's actions on improving consumers' ability to make emergency calls using mobile and internet protocol, or IP, technologies. Given the extraordinary growth of mobile and IP services, not to mention that some consumers may not care to understand the complexities of the technologies, how the systems operate, or their regulatory treatment, I'm pleased that the Commission is continuing its efforts in this very important area. For example, in cases of heart attack or stroke, time is of the essence. A mobile device may be the only means to get help. It is crucial that we do all we can to improve emergency responders' ability to locate victims quickly. I thank all the interested parties for sharing their insights and marketplace experiences on this topic in response to the notice of inquiry initiated last September. And I'm grateful to the chairman for his willingness to accept edits that allow for additional comment on indoor location accuracy testing. It is sensible for the Commission to undertake further study in this area, given that the number of indoor wireless calls has increased dramatically in recent years. Many thanks are also due to the chairman, and I'm thanking the chairman a lot today, but that probably will go unreported, for his support of improvements to our questions regarding the Commission's authority with regard to non-interconnected VoIP services. Given the unique context present here, I support the narrowly tailored questions set forth in the notices of proposed rulemaking. Just last year, in fact, Congress passed legislation indicating that the Commission's definition of interconnected VoIP may include non-interconnected VoIP services, thereby contemplating a greater level of authority for the Commission over these voice services. Moreover, as set forth in Section 151 of the Act, Congress long ago charged the Commission with promoting safety of life and property through the use of wire and radio communications. In addition to other statutory provisions, there is a long-standing recognition that ensuring clear and effective communications in times of emergency is a key aspect of the Commission's mission. Under these circumstances, I support our inquiry regarding the Commission's level of jurisdiction over the use of non-interconnected VoIP services for making emergency voice calls, but only in this narrow context. Finally, in this instance, I support our decision to refrain from including draft rules at this time. Now, normally I am a proponent of including draft rules. As we remain at a preliminary stage, however, final proposals have yet to be developed. For example, many of our questions are open-ended and seek input from the Communications Security Reliability and Interoperability Council, a team of experts that provides recommendations to ensure, among many other things, optimal reliability and functionality of our nation's communications systems. We also need a strong record illustrating the costs and technical feasibility of implementing these ideas. Thus, I approve of this prudent approach to develop the record further before drafting proposed rules. Assisting consumers in times of emergency is one of the Commission's core responsibilities and is among the highest callings of public servants. Accordingly, I look forward to learning more as a result of today's proceedings. As always, I thank our talented staff, as led by Admiral Barnett, for all their hard work and diligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn.
As our 15th Mobile Services Report points out, the number of Americans who subscribe to wireless phone services has been increasing each year for the past 9 years, and as of 2009, that figure exceeds 274 million. Therefore, it is important that the Commission's public safety policies keep pace with the nation's growing dependence on these technologies. With regard to mobile wireless E911 services, we must adopt rules that continue to improve the ability of public safety personnel to obtain accurate information when a person uses a mobile phone to make an emergency call. Our regulatory approach should be comprehensive and adapt to the technological advances in the mobile wireless industry, but our approach should also be reasonable and flexible enough to permit carriers to find the path to more accurate wireless E911 services that is most cost-effective for them. This item, I believe, strikes the right balance. The report and order recognizes that the industry should be working towards a more stringent standard we set for handset-based location technologies. It requires all new wireless providers, which meet the definition of covered CMRS providers in our rules, to satisfy that standard. It also explains that the Commission intends to sunset the less stringent network-based location standard, but it appropriately declines to impose a unitary standard for all providers. The record makes clear that providers who are currently using network-based E911 solutions are migrating to handset-based solutions. Accordingly, the more accurate handset-based standard should, as a practical matter and without a regulatory mandate, become the industry standard. The two notices we adopt today properly seek comment about expanding 911 location service requirements to cover more VoIP services. The item explains that as the use of location-based services on smartphones becomes more prevalent, Americans are beginning to expect that their service providers know their current location wherever they are using that device. It is therefore reasonable for them to also expect that when they make a 911 call, their current location information should be provided to public safety agencies, whether they make the call using traditional commercial wireless services or whether they are using VoIP services. Technical experts at the Internet Engineering Task Force, such as Dr. Henning Shosrini, he'll forgive me, who I had the great pleasure of meeting on a number of occasions when he served at the FCC, who I also just saw in Wyoming, by the way, have proposed standards that should allow that type of location communication to occur whenever a person chooses to make the 911 call using VoIP services. I hope that all relevant parties will contribute additional technical expertise that will move us closer to that goal. I commend Admiral Barnett and his team at the Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau for presenting us with an excellent item.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. We are at a time of great opportunity and serious challenge when it comes to harnessing the potential of communications technologies to help first responders and save lives. A nationwide, interoperable, mobile broadband public safety network would put the communications tools consumers take for granted in the hands of police, firefighters, and other first responders. It's a recommendation of the 9/11 Commission. I applaud the Senate Commerce Committee for recently passing legislation to build a broadband public safety network. The House Energy and Commerce Committee is working on similar legislation and will continue to work with Congress to make that vision a reality. On emergency alerts, modern communications gives us the opportunity to alert people to disasters anytime, anywhere, but until recently this was just a theory. I'm pleased that I was able to announce at Ground Zero the accelerated deployment of a new national mobile alerting system plan, which will allow people to receive emergency alerts directly on their mobile phones wherever they are. This is complementary to the broadcast emergency alert system. It's a very important complement. A similar system saved lives during the recent earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and Plan will make a real difference here in the U.S. during, for example, disasters like the recent tornadoes in the southeast, where every second of warning counts. With respect to 911, there are also big opportunities and challenges. Opportunities to connect people at 911 responders through all forms of communication. But today's 911 system does not empower all the means of communications that consumers take for granted. It doesn't provide, for example, for sending text to 911 or photos or video. Today, the average American sends about 20 texts a day. The average teenager sends over 100. But our 911 systems are not set up to receive them. We're hard at work developing a game plan to accelerate next generation 911, and I will continue to make this an agency priority. Today's action is part of this important larger picture of public safety communications, and I want to thank Admiral Barnett and the rest of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, as well as Amy Levine in our office, for juggling all of these different initiatives to seize the opportunities of innovative communications technologies to help first responders, to help save lives, to help respond to emergencies. Today's action addresses another major opportunity and challenge, that of ensuring that mobile 911 works as it should. For both the current 911 system and next generation 911 to work, we have to be sure that callers can be located wherever they are, whatever technology they're using to communicate. Mobile phones allow people to call 911 from anywhere, including places where traditional phones aren't available. It's not a surprise, given the convenience, given the statistics that Commissioner Clyburn mentioned, that the percentage of 911 calls from mobile phones has increased dramatically, from about 25% of all 911 calls in 2001 to over 65% today. Now, that's good news except for this. When Americans call 911 from their landlines, first responders receive accurate location information more than 98% of the time. When Americans call 911 from their mobile phones, first responders are about 50% less likely to receive precise information about the caller's location. 1/2 as likely in 911 calls from mobile. This affects people all over the country in urban and rural areas. The inaccuracy can be up to 1 or 2 miles or can fail to pinpoint the caller's location inside a building, particularly a tall building, an office building, or the PSAT may get no location information at all. It's not good enough. We must do better. A consumer who has come to expect an alert on her cell phone that a nearby restaurant is offering a discounted meal should also be able to expect that when she contacts 911 on that same device, first responders will know where she is. Today's order sets us on the path to improving the delivery of accurate location and information when the public calls for help. It continues the process that, thanks to our Bureau, we began in September, strengthening our existing E911 location accuracy rules by requiring all wireless carriers to meet the more stringent metrics of the handset-based location accuracy standards. Now, the item has a necessary transition plan to come into compliance. I encourage commercial mobile carriers to beat the deadlines, as many mobile carriers have committed to accelerate implementation of the new plan emergency mobile alerts. I commend the carriers who have agreed to accelerate mobile alerting, the rollout of mobile alerting and plan, and I'd like to see the mobile carriers beat our deadlines when it comes to location information for mobile 911. In that same vein, I encourage VoIP providers to work with us to ensure that VoIP consumers can call 911 in an emergency with the first responders getting the location information they need to save lives. There are technological challenges, but I'd like to see the industry respond to this call and work with us to accelerate that process as well. I want to thank again Admiral Barnett, you, everyone involved in this important item, but not just this, but our full public safety communications agenda. I'll end where I started. It's a time of just tremendous opportunity and also tremendous challenges, and I'm very grateful that we have such a terrific team working hard, working with CISRIC, and I will thank CISRIC in advance for jumping into this with us. The public safety community has worked very closely with our Bureau and with the Commission on these measures, as well as all stakeholders. I look forward to continuing to see real progress and making sure that communications technology is harnessed to save lives and improve our public safety communications system and networks. With that, let us proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So ordered, and the request for editorial privileges is granted. So thank you very much. That concludes what was, I think we'd all agree, a terrific agenda for today. I hope that the unanimity doesn't detract from the importance of what we're addressing today. All very important items. Let me ask my colleagues if any of them has announcements today.
I do have one announcement. We have completed the mobilization of our summer intern team, so I wanted to introduce our fourth and final intern, Braju Bakert, and ask her to stand, please. Braju is working on yet another master's at New York University in media, culture, and communications. I say another because she already has a master's in political communications from Goldsmiths, University of London. And her dissertation, very tantalizingly, is entitled, "Is the Internet a Civil Right?" And I suspect we came to the same answer. I hope so here. Braju took her undergraduate degree in Istanbul, one of my favorite cities, at Bogazici, and I probably mispronounced that university. She's nodding her head, so I guess I did mispronounce it. She has a whole array of grants and fellowships and awards, including a Fulbright Scholarship and a Jean Monnet Scholarship. She is already hard at work, doing splendid work alongside James and Van and Todd, and what is surely one of the busiest little summer intern jobs anywhere in the city of Washington, so we are delighted to welcome her to our team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a long amount of announcements. We have some hellos and some goodbyes, unfortunately for the goodbyes. But first of all, hello to Aaron McGrath. Aaron, would you like to stand? I know most people here know you, but maybe not on the internet. There we go. Aaron McGrath joins me as acting legal advisor for media issues. And she comes to us, well, from here at the FCC, where she's been since the year 2000. She got her law degree in 1998 at the Cardozo School of Law in New York City, where she was editor-in-chief of the Women's Law Journal and went through law school on a scholarship. Before that, she's a fellow Ivy Leaguer, a rival of yours, Mr. Chairman. She attended the University of Pennsylvania, where she got a BA in political science and American history. I want to clarify that. That's one degree, not a double major? Double major, okay. She's also a Yankees fan. If anyone wants to, Mets, Red Sox, okay. And she, of course, comes from the Wireless Telecom Bureau, where she has worked on many, many complicated and controversial mergers over the years, including Singular AT&T Wireless, Verizon RCC, Verizon Altel, AT&T Bell South. I missed that one. I don't remember that one. XM Sirius, or is it Sirius XM? Anyway, she's also worked in the Media Bureau. She worked diligently on the intricacies of the Comcast NBC Universal transaction. She's no stranger to the 8th floor. She helped Commissioner Baker set up her 8th floor office a couple of years ago as well. and has a wide variety of experience from NTIA to the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities to clerking for a federal judge in New York City. So we want to say welcome, and we have a lot coming up. We've been busy trying to digest the Third Circuit's opinion and to analyze how that's going to affect us going forward. I have to, we've had very little turnover in my office in over 5 years, which I'm very proud of that. And I'm also not very good at farewells, so I tend to get emotional. But it has been an extreme honor to work with Rosemary Harold, who is an attorney of the most superlative caliber. She has been at the Commission since 2005. For 3 years, she was Deputy Chief of the Media Bureau, and I was able to convince her to join my office. Bipartisanship on both of our parts. She is a Democrat. I am not. That's not the first time I've had a legal advisor who's not a Republican, so I like to have a diversity of viewpoint even in my own office, as well as throughout traditional and new media as well. She is a strong defender of the First Amendment and knows a heck of a lot about its history, as well as great intricacies of media law. Before that, she was both an associate and later a partner at Wiley, Ryan & Fielding. She also, which caught my attention early on, many moons ago, was an intern for the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. She was an editorial coordinator for C-SPAN, has just a dynamic resume. She was the Key West bureau chief for the Miami Herald. Now, I explained to her at the time that was probably the pinnacle of her career. Why would you ever trade that for anything? I don't know. You were at the Naples Bureau before that, but to be bureau chief at the Key West Bureau of the Miami Herald must have been a wonderful experience. She also, on her resume, not only was she order the coif and magna cum laude at Georgetown, I like hiring people who are smarter than I am, but she went to the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Now I have a very strong affection for Mizzou, because were it not for Mizzou, I would literally not be here. That's where my parents met, was in the journalism school. So we wish her well. You're not actually leaving the commission yet, but you've left my office now several weeks ago, and we are sad to have you gone, but wish you the best in your future endeavors and are eager to know what they are. Okay, I told you this is going to be a long one, so I apologize. We're welcoming Tasha Kinney. Tasha, there she is. Thank you, Tasha. Tasha is our ultimate first responder. She mans the front lines there at the desk in the McDowell office. She is a fellow Washington, D.C. native, as I am, and as Bridget is as well. She has been at the commission since last September, but has an excellent resume in public service throughout many departments and agencies. Department of Agriculture, GSA, the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm sure that was probably the peak of your career, actually. It was sort of like a Key West for Rosemary. That must have been fascinating. The Department of Veterans Affairs, and then also, interestingly, the Defense Information Systems Agency. She could tell me more about her work there, but she would have to kill me, apparently, so we can't talk about that. But we welcome her, and she is a wonderful, friendly face to have. Now, did Rafael come downstairs? No, I didn't think he did. Rafael Fernandez is being stolen away from my office after over 5 years. He was the very first employee of the McDowell office when I got sworn in right here on June 1st, 2006. The whole operation, the McDowell operation, was me and Rafael for several days. And he's being stolen away to work on the FCC's new tech center, which I will be touring here shortly. He has been our own John Wayne, defending our own Fort Apache at times, and he will be awarded the John Riggins Award in my office, which I'll explain that some other time. So we thank Rafael for his service and look forward to working with him when he's in the tech center. And by the way, he's one of the best bass guitarists you'll ever meet, and is fundamental to the FCC band. So when you see him back there, but he hates the limelight, interestingly, so that's why he's not down here. We should have had like a cardboard cutout to hold up for the cameras, but in any case. Then last but not least, we do have reinforcements to the ranks of our interns. Aiden, would you mind standing up and keep standing, don't sit down shyly. Aiden oh, he did sit down, okay. Well, he's a bit of an experiment. We have only had an undergraduate once as an intern, and it worked out well, and we're doing it again. He is an undergraduate at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, where he is a candidate for a bachelor's in philosophy at the Krieger School of Arts and Sciences, which means you will be as employable as I wasn't when I graduated from college. No, I'm just kidding. He comes to us from the UK, where he graduated from Eton College in England, where he graduated with A-levels in economics, theology, and history. He has also worked at Knight Securities in London, as well as the Conservative Party press office, and was an intern for Greg Osborne, a member of Parliament. He has dual citizenship here in the U.S. and Sweden, but ironically not the U.K., and when you speak with him, you are sure he's a citizen of the U.K., and he will make sure all of our writings are grammatically correct in the King's English, or the Queen's English, as the case may be. But he plays rugby and rowing, and represented Eton College in rowing, including in the national championships. Now, he likes to wear red socks. I don't know if that means he is a Red Sox fan, however, so we can find out and ask him. But welcome, Aiden. We look forward to having him. That's it. Now I'm finally done.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn?
I'm trying to get over the Red Sox, actually. They're very, very red. But that's it for me. Thank you.
A little more illumination on the 8th floor is probably a good thing. Let me join Commissioner McDowell, Commissioner Copps in welcoming the new and saying goodbye. Rosemary, I want to in particular thank you for your service. As you know, and working for any of the commissioners on the 8th floor is a very important responsibility and a big challenge. The volume is high. The quality of the discussions among the legal advisors is just really first rate, and you've been just a critical player in that for some time, and on behalf of all of us, I appreciate your service and wish you well. And the only other announcement that I have, I would like to mention that tomorrow we will be opening the doors to our new Technology Experience Center. It's an innovative, first-in-government resource for agency staff and visitors to have hands-on experience with cutting-edge communications devices, the things that we work on every day. I won't say anything more about it now. I'll have more to say tomorrow. But I encourage you to come to the opening, and I encourage everyone at the FCC to experience our Technology Experience Center, again, open tomorrow. With that, Madam Secretary, please announce the date of the next agenda meeting.
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Tuesday, August 9th, 2011.
Thank you. Until then, we are adjourned.
Same rules as always, one question, no follow-ups, and let's start over here with Brooks from Politica. Mix it up today.
Who is that? I don't recognize you, Brooks, without your hat.
Well, it's inside.
Summer? Inside.
Yeah. I moved down here to go last, but if a licensee commits a crime in another country, is that something the FCC would consider when they consider renewal of their licenses?
Well, I'm not going to answer hypotheticals. Obviously, there's a process going on in the UK, and that is a UK process, and I don't expect that we'll be involved in that.
Thanks. Next question, Paul.
Chairman Paul Barber-Gallo from BNA. On the issue of Universal Service Fund reform, what is your hope and expectation for agency action on one specific item of reform, and that's the rural health care program and the various reforms? Some groups have criticized the agency for delays. So,
I don't have an answer for you on timing. Obviously, we're in the middle of a comprehensive reform of Universal Service Fund to address issues that have been lingering for way too long, including issues of waste and inefficiency. So we're in the home stretch of the major review. As you know, we've already taken steps in a variety of areas on waste, fraud, abuse. We've taken steps on Lifeline link-up to tackle the issue of duplicate applications. It's been a central focus of our work on the high cost fund. I think you saw on video relay service, we've taken some very significant steps. On the rural healthcare piece, the opportunity is enormous, right? So every day we see more and more of the benefits of electronic health records and other connectivity-based healthcare services, which is great if your family doctor or your rural health clinic is connected. And as you know, the connectivity gap is significant. We have to close it. Obviously, we have to, and we will do it in a way that gets the maximum benefit from every dollar that goes into the program. The last point I'd make is there are pilot programs that were started before I got here. I think the idea of starting pilot programs was exactly right. Some issues have come up with the way those pilot programs were launched, and that's something the Bureau is focused on, make sure we learn the lessons from the pilot program so that we can move forward on the program in a healthy way.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, Ted Gotch, Telecommunications Reports. Continuing with the USF issue, in recent weeks, several FCC staffers have been at different open forums, conferences, what have you, and have sort of come out and said that the August date, which was sort of given, I believe, by you, by other commissioners, as maybe the front end of the window for a USF ICC order to be considered, had sort of closed, and that it now was going to be delayed. August was sort of off the table. I was just wondering, you have not spoken specifically to that. It is obviously only August 9th, less than a month away. Do you shut the door on an August consideration? And if so, are you still sticking with leaves before they fall off the trees, or have we moved on to now a time when kids can jump into a pile of brown leaves on the street?
Ted, I'm going with we're in the home stretch, and we are. The staff is working very hard. The stakeholders are working very hard. I don't think it's news that we're not going to do it in August, but we are in the home stretch, and it's a very important proceeding. We're spending billions of dollars a year, not the way that we should spend it to meet our country's broadband needs. And so upgrading, updating, modernizing USF for broadband, doing it in a way that tackles the inefficiency and waste issues that are in it, that moves significantly to close the rural-rural divide, meet our larger broadband goals and objectives for the United States. It's very important. I think you saw that all of the commissioners together, we issued, I'm sure this is the first time in the history of the FCC, a joint blog emphasizing that it's something where we share the same goals, the same principles, the same commitment to getting it done. I will tell you that the staff is working extremely hard on this, and as I said, we're in the home stretch.
What factors would warrant the FCC to look into News Corp's licenses to broadcast in the U.S., and could the scandal in Britain put Murdoch's fitness to run broadcast outlets in the U.S. into question?
Well, it's the same question. There's obviously a process going on in the UK that is not a process that we expect to get involved with or interfere with. The Mass Media Bureau here will do its job if any issues arise.
Leslie Stimson from Radio World. As the FCC begins to implement the Local Community Radio Act, about how many more LPFMs do you think could be licensed, and what would you base that estimate on?
Well, that's a good question, Bill. Is there an estimate of the number, a range?
Consider a potential universe. What's the best way to do that?
Well, it is hard to know, but we're expecting thousands of applications in the next window. The elimination of the adjacent channel protection requirements is going to help, but that's the wonder of a window. You have a party and you find out who shows up, but in the scale of thousands of applications, we need to maybe more than 1,000 new stations.
Good. So more than 1,000 was the answer. Bill will be up later, and Peter will help you with more information. The important notes that I'd make is we're moving forward. There's been this log jam, and we're now breaking it, and we're going to make sure that the spectrum is used efficiently for a combination of both new LP/FM stations and translators, it's something that I think will have very significant positive effect.
Thank you.
Jonathan?
Hello, Jonathan May, Com Daily. Thanks, Chairman. Question on the Third Circuit ruling last week, and that is what do you see the impact of that as being on two proceedings, the pending program carriage complaint order and rulemaking, and then also, of course, the quadrennial review? Thanks.
Well, obviously, Bill will be up here soon, but Bill Lake at the Media Bureau and our general counsel are analyzing the order for its impact on the process we already have undergoing for reviewing our ownership rules. And Bill might be able to say a little bit more, but obviously we'll take into account the court's decision as we go through our process. Fundamentally, it was another example of the court upholding our authority in an important area of what we do, and so I was pleased to see that, and pleased on behalf of our general counsel's office and our work in general.
Great, thank you.
How about, sorry, there was another.
Actually, he asked about program carriage too, and I don't know, and I'll defer to Bill when he comes up here, but I don't know that that decision will have an effect on our program carriage rules. I may be missing something. We obviously are looking at program carriage, and there are various things underway. If I'm missing something on the relationship between that court decision and our program carriage rules, Bill or Austin will address it.
Great, thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone, thank you. Have a great day. Happy summer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll now proceed to phase 2 of the press conference, the briefings on the items, and we'll start with the low-power FM item, the first item with Bill Lake and his team. Who would like to start? All right, well, all right, Leslie?
What is the proposed processing policy? Because you're talking about allowing some new stations or new translators and LPFMs in an area if there's enough spectrum on a market-based approach, but can you get more in depth on what all that is?
Leslie, the basic plan is that the item proposes certain LPFM channel floors in each market based on market size, so that, for example, in the very largest markets, the proposed channel floor is 8 channels available for LPFM licensing. In those markets where we have studied every market, and where we have identified that the number of available channels plus licensed LPFM stations in the core central area of that market meet or exceed the channel floor, we propose to process all of the translator applications in that market. Where where there's insufficient spectrum for low power, we propose to dismiss all the translator applications in that particular market. As it sorts out, but in about half the top 150 markets, we would be dismissing, we propose to dismiss all the translator applications, and in the other half process all the translator applications. And that process would happen before we open the next LPFM window. The item seeks comment on opening that window by next summer.
I understood some of that, but can you explain the channel floor? You were mentioning 8. are you saying there's some sort of tier system
Yes,
for
it's a tier system.
LPFMs in a market?
It's 8 channels in the top 20 markets, 7 channels in markets 21 to 50, 6 channels 51 to 100, and 5 channels 101 to 150. And we studied some additional markets where there are 4 or more translator applications pending.
So just like full power FMs there and stations, there's a limit to how many, the tiered market, there's a limit to how many stations you can have in a market. Now there would be limits for LPFMs, how many you could have in a market.
It's not that we're imposing limits. Well, in each of the top 150 markets, we created a 30-minute by 30-minute grid over the central city coordinates of that market. We created a 31-point by 31-point rectangle. We studied all 100 channels for LPFM availability, taking into account the pending translator applications. So we studied 961 points in 150 markets and studied all 100 channels in those markets. We eliminated those points that were over major bodies of water. We didn't make any further assessment as to the viability of transmitter sites. Based on that, in each market we identified the number of channels that continue to be available for low power FM licensing. That's one number. We also identified the number of low power stations operating in these core market locations. And if those two numbers add up to at least the market floors of 8765, the item proposes to process all of those translator applications.
Okay, so it's a formula. Yeah. I did have a follow-up on.
We have others who need to ask questions.
Okay, sorry.
Jonathan, did you have one?
Sure, it's okay by me if you wanted to ask it.
Right.
Go ahead.
I just had one follow-up. You were talking about expanding the ways AMs could be rebroadcast on FM translators. Could you talk about some of the how you could expand that?
When the Commission acted in 2009, it established a May 2009 dividing line that authorizations issued out of the 2003 window before that date would be made available or could be used for AM/FM translator rebroadcasting. But based on concerns that a policy of generally permitting this would create more demand for translators and therefore potentially preclude low power stations, the Commission said that anything forward that we grant out of the 2003 window could not be used for AM/FM translator rebroadcasting. What this item seeks comment on is whether to lift that May 2009 limitation and permit any further new station translator licensing that comes out of the 2003 window to permit those translators to be used for AM/FM translator rebroadcasting. The general question, as on a completely going forward basis, whether to permit translators to be used in this way, is actually before the Commission in a petition for reconsideration of that 2009 order.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other books? Did you have a question, or you? Okay. Jonathan?
Sure. Hi. Just a couple follow-ups, I guess, for Peter. Okay, did I hear correctly that you were saying about half the top 150 radio markets you would dismiss, the Bureau that is proposes to dismiss all of the remaining Auction 83 applications, and the other half, did you say all would be granted? Is that right?
Not all would be processed. These applications were auction filings, and they are subject to certain settlement and auction rules. Basically, everything that we have left, the 6,500 applications, are in some kind of mutual exclusivity relationship to at least one other translator application filing. And so the way the process would probably start is fairly early on. We'd have a settlement process. The item does seek comment on whether to restrict that settlement process in terms of perhaps not permitting the translator applicants to specify adjacent channels or different sites to enter into technical solutions to break apart the conflicts between the mutually exclusive applications.
And did I hear you right, very much ballpark estimate, you're saying that potentially you could get as many as, over time from the forthcoming window next year, 1,000 LPFM licensees?
As soon as I said it, I regretted that, Jonathan. Now, I've been consistently wrong in guessing demand in Windows, and I have consistently underestimated. I don't know what's coming. I mean, what I can point to is the fact that unlike the 2000-2001 window, there will be, because it's mandated in the LCRA, there will be no third adjacent protection requirements. The legislation also requires the Commission to establish a second adjacent channel waiver procedure. So on technical issues, there's going to be added flexibility to licensed stations. One would think that through the efforts of Prometheus and the now 900 plus low power stations, that there is a community radio infrastructure that may be able to generate additional interest in new low power stations. But we work on a demand-based system. We open the window and we see what comes in.
We need to move on to others, but one last question on this. Brooks?
When you get down to, you have, like in a big market, you may have more than one LPFM application for a particular channel. So then you have to go through some process to decide which is the applicant that wins that channel. So that's got to be some comparative process. And I'm going to forget the name of this case, but it was like Bechtel or something like that, threw that out for regular broadcast stations. How do you handle that with the legal precedent in that case?
Yeah, well, that's right. Bechtel threw out the commercial comparative standards as arbitrary and capricious in the mid-90s. After that, the Commission recognized certain similarities between our non-commercial comparative standards to our commercial ones and decided we needed to redo those. And we went through rulemakings that led in around 2000 to new non-commercial standards. We have already used those new non-commercial point system type standards to license both low power stations filed in a 2000-2001 window and probably more than 1,000 full power non-commercial stations filed in a 2007 window. The 2 point systems that we use for low power and full power non-commercial are somewhat different, but no one has challenged our those standards under arbitrary and capricious type standards, and with thousands of licenses into those two services.
Okay, thank you. If you have any other technical questions, Janice is here and Peter would be available as well. So.
Bill, was there anything you wanted to add on program carriage or on the quadrennial review in regards to the Prometheus ruling, just in case?
Basically, I would second what the chairman said. We obviously need to look at the impact of the Third Circuit's decision on our ongoing quadrennial review. Among other things, the court's opinion says some things it specifically expects us to do in that review, but we'll look very thoroughly at what that means for that proceeding. We don't see any immediate impact on our proposed update and revision of the program carriage rules. So when we put that out for comment, of course, if others do see a connection, they're welcome to point that out in their comments.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to item 2, the cramming item. Joel Guerin and the CGB team. Questions? Oops. Okay, Ted?
Ted Dodge with Telecommunications Boards. My question was, could you give any insight on why wireless was included in having to notify consumers of the ability to file complaints with the FCC's on their bills and websites, but not in separating its third-party charges on bills or notifying subscribers about its ability to block? Is there any thinking on that you can explain?
Well, as was mentioned during the presentation, the number of cramming complaints that have been received by the Commission and other federal and state agencies is far greater for wireline than wireless. But the item does in part ask whether any of the rules that are proposed for wireline should apply to wireless as well. With regard to the question of including FCC contact information for complaints, to the extent that some wireless consumers have problems with cramming, we believe that there should not be any bar to putting that information on the bills as well, so that can facilitate anybody that feels victimized, regardless of the type of carrier that's provided the service, from complaining to the FCC and facilitating their ability to do so.
Paul?
Hi, Paul Barbagallo from BNA. Based on your analysis of the complaints, both from wireline telephone service consumers and wireless, typically, what are these services and what are the companies? What type of charges are being placed on consumers' bills? And just as a second part to that question is, if you do discover that a company is fraudulent, as basically offering fraudulent charges, what happens then? Just in terms of the internal agency process.
Well, I'll take that one. So the companies, the third-party companies that participate in cramming vary quite a bit. Some provide services that are common carrier type services, such as long distance. Others literally can provide anything from diet plans to yoga lessons, or at least claim to provide. They will bill for them in any case. So our jurisdiction in terms of going after the crammers themselves varies depending on the type of service. So we can take enforcement action against crammers, third-party crammers, that offer or that bill for common carrier type services. And the 4 notices of apparent liability that were released by the Commission in the last month, after the investigation by our Enforcement Bureau, were all against companies that purported to offer certain kinds of long-distance service. If, on the other hand, the crammer is a different kind of, is billing for a different kind of service, diet plans, horoscopes, whatever it is, those crammers would be handled by the Federal Trade Commission, and we will refer complaints to them. At the same time, however, we do have jurisdiction over all carriers in terms of how they structure, truth in billing rules apply across the board, and that's the basis for the disclosure provisions that we're talking about here.
And the FCC and the FTC have been working in conjunction on this issue for some time,
We work very
right?
closely together with them on cramming in many ways, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else on the, Brooks?
Is this part of the bill shock issue, or does bill shock continue?
Bill shock is a separate issue on a different track, and we're continuing to look at that very hard. As you know, we had a notice of proposed rulemaking on bill shock. We've gotten a lot of comments in response to that. We're looking at the comments and deciding what steps to take next.
Anything else on cramming? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
We'll now go to the third item, the public safety, the E911. David Firth. Questions? Oh, I could have saved them a trip. No questions? Brilliant. Thank you. All right, that concludes the press conference, and that concludes today's agenda meeting. Thank you very much.